control the vertigo.
Welcome to Anthologic, the TV anthology podcast. I am your host, Mark. Anthologic is a podcast dedicated to exploring the good, the bad, and the odd of horror, science fiction, and the best of mystery suspense anthology shows and series on TV. Join me as we slip through the cracks of reality to approach the extremes of experience, where we can peruse the stories and art of a sinister fairground of strange and wonderful rides. And now we go on to the show that is the focus of this particular episode. Welcome to this episode of Anthologic with your host Mark. Today, the little slice of a bygone age comes to you. We're talking about Tales of Tomorrow, which was a sci-fi anthology series that aired between August the 3rd, 1951 and June the 12th, 1953. Went for 2 seasons, 85 episodes in all, which is a fair old time. Runs to roughly 25 to 30 minutes, depending on ads and stuff like that. And it's an interesting one. This went on to inspire, I'm sure, the Twilight Zone, but also what came after it was some things like science fiction theatre, stuff like that. And it's got an interesting pedigree in there. Lots of people we would still know now appeared in it. Lon Chaney, for example, and Boris Karloff, and occasionally it would also veer into stories that are very well known. I believe it covered Frankenstein in one episode, for example, and the likes of not just Boris Karloff and Lon Chaney, but the likes of James Dean, Paul Newman, Leslie Nielsen, Veronica Lake, Rod Steiger appeared in this at various times. So it's got quite some famous actors involved with it. In fact, I believe one episode of it called What You Need was covered in the Twilight Zone. They redid it, or they reused the story, or they based it on the same story. So how about that? And at the time it was regarded as fairly good sci-fi. At the time, a lot of sci-fi tended to be geared for kids, but this was specifically focused to be about adults, so it was dramatic, and there was often an element of mystery. In addition, our authors, were involved with it. For example, Arthur C. Clarke was involved with it. It had quite the pedigree. As I say, it ran for 2 years, quite a late slot, 9:30, 10 p.m, so fairly late. And it was always the same slot on a Friday night at 9:30. I guess all the teenagers would be out and the kids would be in bed, so it was aimed at adults. It was they also, when this was being output onto TV, they tried a radio version too. There was a short radio version that was not successful. There was lots of radio shows of the very similar format that were successful, but this one didn't really pick up. Mostly this is in the public domain, so you can actually go to YouTube and watch episodes. You can certainly watch the episode I'm going to be talking about, but there is also box sets you can buy. I bought it from somewhere, I don't know where, I can't remember, it was a while ago, but it's got French subtitles hard burnt into it, so it must have been from a French region. But it doesn't detract too much. The quality is very poor though. You just have to take that with it. The particular episode I'm going to talk tonight is called Verdict from Space, and it starts in a courtroom with a guy being sort of charged for murder, but based on only circumstantial evidence. He insists he's innocent, and this money that this professor gave to him before the professor disappeared, he claims was to help him do stuff. And essentially, this is a bookend sort of thing. This courtroom leads us into the story, which is done by flashback. This guy is like a mechanic engineer who's built this special torch to cut through metals much better than other torches. It's employed by this professor to help him, and they go and find this secret area and location, and there's a weird machine in it, and things happen. Now, interesting one. I mean, it was hokey, it was overly melodramatic, perhaps. It was early days of TV, so it's kind of understandable, but it was decent story. Weirdly, the story made me think, this story seems familiar, and it's that trope of basically aliens have left something on Earth so they can monitor us and check our progress. And sometimes in some versions of that particular story, the aliens are there to sort of help us along. In others, they're there to make sure we don't get out of hand. If you want a case of the latter, the plot of Plan 9 for Outer Space is an example. The aliens are monitoring the Earth to make sure we don't get too strong, because we might accidentally stumble on something that destroys the galaxy, kind of thing. And yeah, kind of get similar stories throughout Doctor Who as well, especially the third Doctor, John Pertwee run. There's stuff about aliens watching the Earth because we started to go into space and stuff like that. However, what it did remind him most of, essentially this is aliens have planted something on Earth to monitor our progress, and so they can be alerted when we've reached a certain stage. And it appears possibly malevolent, but we're not quite sure till the end. I probably will spoil this. It doesn't detract if I do, really, but if you don't want it to be spoiled, you might want to stop shortly and go find it and watch it if you wish to. One interesting thing about it is the sponsorship's kind of weaved into the episode. The sponsorship kind of runs into the presenter talking about what's going on in the screen, and in fact the sponsor is, I can't remember the full name, but Chrysler. It's a watch strap. It's ads, really. Lovely watch strap. At one point, even in the show, there's a close-up of the watches these guys are wearing. The watches have stopped, but their watch straps are immaculate. So it kind of stresses the sponsorship deal, I guess. I mean, it's a very distracting scene because it doesn't make any sense of focusing on these guys' wrists while they're doing stuff. But there you go. Now, this story reminded me strongly of 2001, A Space Odyssey. The whole black box thing in that is a very similar dynamic to what's going on here. Though the aliens have different intentions, it appears, in that movie, the story feels like it should be paying homage to this. And interestingly, as I mentioned before, Arthur C. Clarke was involved in writing some of the episodes of the show, and Arthur C. Clarke came up with a story that was 2001. So there's a weird little connection there. Whether he copied it or not, who knows? It might be just imitation and flattery, right? I don't know. Or maybe it was all cut from a different cloth. Who knows? But there is that kind of suggestion I got that feel when I watched this. So, Tales of Tomorrow, Verdict from Space, an interesting watch. Oh yeah, I should have mentioned the end. Yeah, it comes back to him from real life. You know, the guy in the courtroom telling his story. No one believes him. Suddenly there's a noise outside. Everyone looks out the windows, and there's spaceships out there, and they look like they're about to start blowing stuff up. And that kind of is the implication. So, basically, this professor, by stumbling on this ancient machine thing, has alerted aliens that man has reached a certain point of technology. He does actually he talks about it's got certain readings when certain things happened, and he says that the biggest reading was the first atomic explosions. So it's almost like the alerting of aliens to our ability to create atomic weaponry is what prompts them to attack the Earth. So yeah, don't play with fire is the implication. I quite like this. As I say, it's on YouTube, so go see what you think if you wish to. But yeah, Tales of Tomorrow, one of our very earliest anthology series, and not bad. The drama held up, and the story was kind of interesting. So there you go, Tales of Tomorrow. So bye from me from this time, but one last question before I go. Is anybody out there?
We now return control of your television set to you until next week at this same time, when the control voice will take you to